Thank you very much, John. Good evening and welcome to the show. First tonight, if your chooks began to lay yolkless eggs, if you had to abandon your home because you couldn't sleep in it, you'd want to know why. These are some of the stories from South Australians who believe wind power and people just don't mix. It's been a politician's dream, a highly visible green energy quick fix, but have we allowed them to get carried away without proper attention to the impact on nearby communities? The industry says it's all in the mind. A growing number of critics say the ill effects are real. Here's Graham Archer with a look at the people battling into the wind.
Realise that people like us are not telling furphies. It's real. We can feel it.
The air is clean, the fields are green, but the tiny hamlet of Waterloo is in the grip of a public health crisis.
I get pressure pain in my ears.
What is the loss of sleep going to do to our lives?
Feeling agitated.
But that's your home.
Well, it was my home. I dread going up there now. I'd do anything not to go up there.
I could not do that to my family. In fact, I couldn't do it to my neighbours because we have to live with our neighbours.
2 years ago, the turbines came, 37 of them, the closest 3 k's from the town. That's when the trouble began. So it's all locked up, Andres?
Yeah, all boarded up.
Must break your heart coming here.
I can't come here anymore. It's just heart-wrenching.
Andreas Marciniak chose to live in a shed under a highway overpass rather than here, his tree change retreat.
I live on the busiest road in South Australia, and I can sleep there. Yet I cannot sleep here. Went to the meetings and I thought this is the best thing ever. Right. Until about, I'd say, 4 or 5 weeks after I started up.
So you were pro renewable energy.
Oh,
still pro wind farm.
Yeah, still am. It's just to get to find out what's causing these problems to myself and my family. If I stayed there, I'd definitely be dead or a vegetable.
His brother John has also abandoned town, leaving his recently renovated home for a caravan and a ruin 20 kilometres away.
Well, it's very primitive, if you want to put it that way, with no power, no laundry, no nothing. I ended up in hospital with serious chest pains and stuff, had stents put in, and the pains are just unbearable. Headaches, earaches.
You think that was directly a result of the wind farms?
Well, I got a lot better when I came down here.
And neighbour Neil's chooks have started laying eggs without yolks. Nothing?
Absolutely nothing.
That's not normal.
No, it isn't.
And have you experienced that before?
No. Well, only in the last 3 months. The chickens went off lay for 6 months, and when they came back on lay for a 3-month period, this is what they produce.
Yolkless eggs?
Yeah.
We can't prove there's a connection, but there are plenty of others who are no longer here to tell their own horror stories. Instead of an environmental solution, this is a disaster area. So how would you describe Waterloo now?
Waterloo, ghost town.
A ghost town?
Yeah. Even when you drive into Waterloo and you go and meet the people that you like to see again, there's an eerie feeling about the whole place.
And these people appear to have nothing to gain by talking down the value of their properties. And in some cases, a fair bit to lose by speaking out.
Not only were we in favour, we were decidedly pro, we were also very instrumental in the wind farm starting up in the first place.
David and Alida Mortimer are committed to renewables and derive significant income from the 2 towers on their southeast property near Lake Bonnie, one just 750 metres from their house.
I won't say how much specifically, but several $1,000s per turbine per year.
The argument's been put that the people who derive revenue from the farms don't complain, but you put the lie to that, don't you?
Yes, I believe so.
In the face of industry derision about jealous whingers, here's proof turbine hosts do get sick, but they're generally bound by contracts with gag clauses.
I don't think we were in a position to be able to withdraw from it and say, hey, no, we don't want to go ahead with this.
Even when they moved to another home 2.5 kilometres away, the ill effects followed them. Alida suffers unexplained dizzy spells.
And if you leave this area, what happens?
Oh, it goes away. I'm fine while we're away from home.
And David...
Waking up in the morning felt like I'd not slept all night, desperately tired in the morning, which was never, I used to wake up refreshed. And nocturnal panic attacks. I'd wake up in the middle of the night trying to escape from things in an absolute blind panic, and I had no idea what I was trying to get away from.
So, what's causing this? Well, nothing, if you accept what the companies, our health authorities and the EPA tell us. They've even used the term nocebo, meaning if you're told you'll feel crook, then you'll probably talk yourself into it. But there's a more scientific possibility.
First off, infrasound is energy that appears in the spectrum below what the human ear can normally hear.
Stephen Cooper is an audio engineer who discovered errors in noise level standards for airports all around the world. They've since been recalibrated based on his research. Now he's turned his ears to wind farms.
The guidelines have utilised generalised noise concepts similar to what you would use for a swimming pool pump, an air conditioner or a motor vehicle. So by using the generic dBA level, that covers normal noises.
They overlook infrasound, low-frequency energy, which Cooper says can interfere with brain patterns, causing sleep disturbance and other side effects. The state EPA denies its presence.
The EPA has consulted the working group and completed an extensive literature search, but is not aware of infrasound being present at any modern wind farm site.
Well, the documentation to say that there's no issue in terms of infrasound is not correct when you look at the facts.
Cooper's independent recordings were conducted in the bedroom of farmer Ken Dixon, just 1.3 kilometres from the Waterloo wind farm.
What did he find?
Well, he found the pulsating of the low-frequency noise levels.
And that's what he calls infrasound?
Infrasound, yes.
And that's what the EPA guidelines say they can't detect from these machines?
Yeah, no, they can't detect that, but Stephen's equipment definitely does.
So it contradicts what the EPA have been saying?
Yes, it is, yes.
And in your bedroom, where you sleep?
Yes, exactly.
There are hundreds of residents around Australia who have identified they are being adversely affected by wind farms.
If the community can uncover this data, it's hard to believe the people who make and install the turbines and the EPA don't have it.
I just don't think they're giving all the information. It's being filtered.
And do you have any doubt that they do know the impact?
Absolutely no doubt whatever.
And it becomes interesting in that the low frequency is actually louder inside the house than outside the house.
And there's growing unease in community after community around the country. This is picturesque Burrawa in central New South Wales. Last week the town gathered to listen to the research the companies and the government authorities have failed to provide.
There's a bucket load of money shoveled out of Canberra in the form of renewable energy credits. No conditions attached to them. No requirement to satisfy individual receptor locations.
Barrister Peter Quinn is there to warn locals about the bitter fight some SA farmers faced when opposing new developments.
The authorities have failed in South Australia and they will fail in New South Wales because of the combination of interests. The EPA and the planning authorities have been co-opted by wind energy groups.
Federal Senator John Madigan is one of the few politicians prepared to speak out against what's become an environmental sacred cow.
It's people we're talking about first and foremost, and it's people being driven off their land. I could tell you story after story, and these people, pardon my French, are not bullshit artists.
While almost all those we spoke to are not opposed to wind power per se, it appears politics and profit have come well ahead of any thoughts or planning over the possible impact on people's lives.
It has got to be rolled back for the sake of Australia, for the sake of the world. Every time a wind farm gets erected on a beautiful hillside in Australia, another community is destroyed, another nail is hammered into your economy.
I'd say Australia, wake up, take your head out of the sand, do a little bit of research and realise that there really are big problems.
Holly and Loch Agad in you, can you get a kind of cliche and the Kenny East William Saxton Shaw? Door session go Rachti at Kochtog in Shaw, Le Play La Hill to she planale, the will to Gree. Sarah Honey, Moya TG.
And feeling the vibration, the infrasound. You don't even have to hear it, it's felt.
The reason we're here is to educate the public about the negative impacts of wind energy. When you're living in a residential area with industrial wind turbines, it's critical that you know what the negative impacts are. The wind power companies didn't tell us. Our town boards didn't tell anyone. So who's there and who's responsible to educate everyone about it? We are, the people, and that's why we're here, so people are aware of what's coming.
If you weren't a host landowner for the turbine, you were totally left out of the picture. You didn't have no clue what was going on with any of this. And that's why we're all here.
The local people should have some say in this too. Anything that's going to impact their lives to this degree should be something that they could have some say in it.
We're here to protest the windmills. We don't feel that the taxpayer should have to subsidize wind power or any other form of power. Any power should stand in the free market, and the test of the free market will determine whether it's worthwhile and efficient, not politicians in Albany or Washington.
So much of rural New York State is going to be converted to these utility scale projects, and they're not going to make a dent to mitigate CO2 levels or anything that hasn't proven to be the fact in other countries that have invested so heavily in these industrial scale renewables. And I just feel like we're going to leave a horrible, horrible legacy for the next generation, a massive cleanup when they realize these things have failed, that we were sold a false premise that they're going to save the day, and all they've done is destroy communities, our rural agricultural lands and beautiful, pristine rural areas. It's senseless.
I live around here and I just don't want to see the destruction in the area.
Our state governor is supporting these terrible wind turbines, and there are people that are going to suffer because of that, and there's no justice for the people.
I'm just here in protest of the whole project. You know, we moved up to this area to have a little peace and quiet and enjoy nature, and obviously we're not getting that now. So I'm just here to let everybody know we're not happy.
We're going to be stuck with these monsters for probably the rest of our lives.
This dust in the road and the mud that they put on this road, just because they're hosing it off with that water, it's going into the ditch, which then goes where? The dust that you breathe from when these trucks go by is not healthy to breathe. It's not healthy to breathe. It's cement dust, it's limestone dust, it's silica dust. which is very, very corrosive and once it gets in your lungs, it never goes away. I ran concrete mixer for 14 years, and we used to wear dust masks with silica dust for silica fly ash. You breathe that dust in, it don't go away. And it's the leading cause of lung cancer.
We kind of got railroaded when it comes to the wind farms and the turbines, and I just don't want to see from my back window looking at a 500-foot tower. I think it's too big, it's too much. I think there are better alternatives, and I feel like we got kind of sold out by our town board is basically why I'm here. I'm just kind of angry.
We're going to get some effects from this. We'll get a lot of flicker effect, I think, on the drumlin that we see from our deck.
The sounds that you don't hear, those subliminal sounds, are very harmful to children. And they've just gone ahead with this, the government-funded business of putting up windmills without really checking into the local community and what they thought about it and what the intelligent people who have researched this understand about it.
Industrial wind turbine project does not have a place here. The setback requirements are not adequate, and the homes are too close, and there's a growing stream of evidence is pointing to the fact that there's adverse health effects and environmental degradation.
Our town was never notified as a populace. It was behind doors, and if you didn't happen to go to a meeting, you didn't know what was coming. It's just very destructive to the, population, the good feelings people used to have for each other, as well as the birds, the wildlife, the forest. It's really sad to see all the construction, big roads where there used to be wildlife and trees, and it's gross.
Up front to the public.
The turbines are very unhealthy close to humans where they live. The sound is attenuated within the walls. So besides that it's not true green energy, it's doubly subsidized, it's non-storable energy. It doesn't run in the worst weather and the hottest weather.
The shadow going through people's homes, I couldn't stand that. And the noise, and even causing the vibration in the walls, that would be horrible, and it's causing mental health problems, and so I've completely turned around on how I feel about them. But apparently it's too late for this area, but should stop it for other areas.
The public was never notified on these, exactly how big they are and the impacts that they were going to have, and they are industrial wind, they're wind turbines, and they don't belong in a residential area.
They could have come to this community and said, well, we will do this in an open way, open meetings. We will let you help plan the whole process here. But it became divisive, and then working in secret to remove certain people and then resculpt all the decision makers in the community. So you end up with, at least 10 provable people that were receiving funds.
Some of the townships are apparently conflicted in interest, where various town municipal officers have been identified by the New York State Attorney General as having financial interest in the wind farms.
They're hiding. This is all lies, and they're hiding, and it's just a few people that are going to make money off of this, and there's not going to be a return for people that are going to suffer the consequences of these wind farms once they're put up.
They started sniffing around here and finding landowners to take that 20 grand a year, and they're hearing money. You're going to hear them.
A few years ago, a company approached us, and they were trying to convince us to clear some of our property. Not knowing too much, we said, absolutely not. They offer you money. So if you are in need and you don't read the small print, you can fall for it easily.
They're not renewable, they're not sustainable, they're not economically viable. They're a disaster to the environment and to the economy of New York.
If you just listen to the wind industry, you're going to hear all kinds of false
values. It won't be home again. The destruction that's going on in Arkwright, the wind turbines are just these companies are coming in and destroying everything. They're clear cut. I drive through Arkwright at least 4 times a day. It's just heartbreaking. And
if we had known this was going to happen, we never would have bought here. This is like a sick joke or some kind of worst nightmare to bring something like this into a, an area like this. You can't turn Lackawanna or Love Canal into a beautiful place like Arkwright, but they're turning Arkwright into an industrial site.
Are located. The home is in Underwood, Ontario. The house is located about 500 meters from the closest wind turbine. What we're seeing here is the fluctuation in the barometric pressure in the home, which is occurring at a frequency identical to the blade passing frequency of the turbines in the immediate area of the home. This blade passing frequency is 0.72 Hertz, or 0.72 cycles per second, far below a frequency that humans perceive as sound, but well within the sensitivity of our eardrums or tympanic membrane, as it is known medically. This variation in barometric pressure is a very small fluctuation relative to the barometric pressure itself, but has a sound pressure level somewhat louder than loud speech at a distance of about 2 feet from a person speaking. This level is about 60 to 65 decibels on average, but reaches much higher and much lower levels over a period of time, as we can see from the oscilloscope display. The display is calibrated in pascals. Each centimeter is about 0.1 pascal. As the barometric pressure rises, the position of the bright dot moves upwards on the screen. As the barometric pressure drops, the dot moves downwards. The up and down cycling of these dots shows that the pressure is cycling up and down. This slide shows precisely the same phenomenon in a different home in Port Elgin, Ontario. There is just one turbine in Port Elgin, which is much smaller than the turbines in Underwood, about 0.5 megawatts versus 1.7 megawatt turbines in Underwood. The turbine in Port Elgin rotates at about twice the RPM as the larger turbines, generating blade passing frequencies of approximately 1.4 Hertz or 1.4 cycles per second. The display shows the higher frequency as more rapid fluctuations in the barometric pressure on both sensors.
I thought it was probably the greatest thing to ever happen to the area. Visited wind farm up at Ararat and was quite impressed, and came home thinking, well, yeah, it's a good thing. It's not until the windmill started turning that we sort of started to experience a few problems.
And what sort of problems have you had?
We've had troubles, ear pressure, headaches, rapid heartbeat, high blood pressure.
20 families living around Warborough's wind turbines have reported similar symptoms, but not everyone can talk about it. Those with turbines on their properties have signed agreements not to speak publicly.
In the yard here you can feel the ones on the hill there, they get into sync, and every minute or two you'll get this, there'll be maybe 3 or 4 big whooshes that you can actually feel.
The most high-profile case of so-called Warborough disease was Trish Godfrey, who spoke to Stateline last year.
Basically, the best way I can describe it is that you feel that you've got motion sickness, but it's not just for a little while, it's all the time in varying degrees. It feels like my head is in a vice. I can't remember the last night that I had a full night's sleep. Usually we wake up at least 5 or 6 times during the night.
Last week she won her battle when the wind farm company Acciona bought her property, but it came at a price. Trish and Victor Godfrey have signed a confidentiality agreement and can't speak publicly. But the company Acciona has issued a statement denying they suffered health effects from the turbines.
No, that certainly wasn't the issue that they contacted us about. As I said, their concern when they contacted us was about the visual impacts.
Absolutely ridiculous, because we all know, and as well as the media knows, as well as the greater community who reads the papers knows, Trish was very much suffering, and there's no question of a doubt it would open the floodgates effectively with regards to liability.
Just down the road from Donald Thomas's house, this property is deserted. The Deans haven't lived here for 10 months.
I won't go out there while the turbines are there. I can't afford to. I'll just get too ill.
Noel Dean has moved to Ballarat. His son works on the farm but won't live there.
It's cost us approximately $400,000 buying this shed, relocating rod and expenses incurred in the monitoring and investigation of the problem, which the wind farm won't do. I've asked compliance from the state government for at least 6 months, and they won't give any confirmation that they've complied with their duty.
We're carrying out all of the compliance obligations that we're required to carry out at that wind farm.
The responsibility of enforcing the permit conditions has been transferred from the Planning Minister Justin Madden to the local council. But the Pyrenees Shire Council has been unable to do its job. It says it has neither the technical skills or the financial resources to enforce the conditions. The council has received many complaints and wants the state government to investigate them.
I honestly don't know. And again, all the official evidence says that no, there isn't an impact. My personal view is very simple. My personal view is I've known these people all my lives. A lot of them I've gone to school with, and I trust them with my life. And they're saying to me they've got an issue, and to me that issue needs to be investigated.
The Planning Minister, Justin Madden, declined a request for an interview, but he issued a statement saying complaints regarding noise levels at the Warbra Wind Farm have been investigated and no breach of the conditions has been found. The Health Department says it has reviewed current research and believes there is no direct evidence that wind farms cause health problems. The Clean Energy Council agrees.
The issue of infrasound comes up in these debates, but after 20 years of wind farm development around the world and 100,000 turbines erected and studied around the world, there is no medical evidence of infrasound causing illness.
Noel Dean has commissioned an independent report on noise levels at his property.
I was waiting for an independent peer-reviewed report, which at the moment indicates that there's non-compliance at our property several times over 10 days. There is pulsing of low frequency, highly suspected of causing the illnesses we are getting.
The report will be presented to a court case in New Zealand next week to demonstrate widespread complaints about health effects. It will include information on Warbra, as well as complaints from 750 people who live near a wind farm in Makara in New Zealand.
I've got information effectively from Makara wind farm in New Zealand, the affidavits from the people who live near that particular wind farm, and similarly questionnaires of a similar nature with regard to health from Warbra that back up the same people in the same situations.
Right along that ridge right along there. And
Donald Thomas fears his problems are about to get worse. There are plans to make the Warbra wind farm even bigger, with more turbines to the north.
There's no way known we can allow Warbra North to go ahead than having lived next to the biggest wind farm in the southern hemisphere.
But the Warbra wind farm will be dwarfed by the Stockyard Hill proposal, west of Ballarat, of more than 200 turbines. Like Warbra, the communities of Beaufort and Skipton are divided over the wind farm. 300 public submissions have been received about the plan.
The lack of information, the refusal to have a public meeting, there is no chance that this will not be approved. I mean, it is an absolute given. This process absolutely favours the deployment and widespread deployment of inappropriate wind farms across Victoria.
Victoria currently has 10 operating wind farms, but another 27 are under development. One of those at Bald Hills in Gippsland was this week granted approval by Planning Minister Justin Madden to increase the height of its turbines by 20% to 135 metres.
It's like a new frontier, effectively, because turbines, when the noise standards were set, for example, were based on turbines that were around 36 metres high, and now they're 136 metres high and reaching into parts of the atmosphere never charted before.
What you're looking at is a turbine in the Forward Energy Project in Fond du Lac County, Wisconsin. As you see by looking at the blades, you can see the ice snow built up on the turbine. I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch the throw of the ice or not, but I just wanted to take this clip here to show you that ice does build up on the turbines. This was told to the Wisconsin Public Service Commission that this does not happen, and actually you can see by this turbine that it does happen.
At first, Ernie Marshall was all for the new wind farm going up near his home.
It sounded like a great idea.
But soon after the turbine started rolling, he says he started suffering a litany of health complaints.
I've had problems with my heart. I've had problems, ears. It traumatizes your whole body.
Same for Helen and Bill Fraser.
We were like, yeah, more green energy.
But they also say they developed odd symptoms.
Headaches, major headaches, not sleeping, aching, like terrible body aches.
In the rush to build wind farms, there are now voices of those who live in the shadows of these gigantic turbines, who say the constant noise, the flickering light, the low-frequency vibrations are making them sick, but that often no one believes them.
And everybody kept calling me a liar. Sit there for a week and listen to it and see what it does to your body. I had to get out, or I wouldn't be standing here right now talking to you.
And in many cases, they say their symptoms then vanish.
I don't have headaches anymore.
This horrific situation of human health is continuing to hurt people right across the country, in the countryside and outside of the major cities, of course, in all Western countries, where the governments are fixated on reducing CO2 emissions. They think that wind farms are going to reduce CO2 emissions. They don't, but anyway, even if they did, it wouldn't make any difference to the climate. So anyway, they're in bed with big business, and they cut through all the regulations, any red tape, green tape, just to approve these projects, these horrific wind farm projects that are destroying everybody's life in the country. There's a massive new wind farm going up in Western Victoria, the Stockyard Hill wind farm, this one here. They're starting production this year, and it's going to have 157 turbines, each of which will be 180 metres tall, located between two towns, Beaufort and Skipton. Those poor devils, geez, I feel sorry for them. They're going to wake up, and they're going to fight back, because these infra-sounds that they don't measure and don't put in any environmental reports, they go across many, many kilometres. Just from, as we saw, 2 kilometres away from one very small windmill. Imagine these 180 metre windmills. Just a kilometre or two from your house, what they'll do. What they'll do to you. They'll destroy your health completely. Here's some good references from a guy called Stephen Cooper, who's quite skilled in this. He's not scared to publish information, real information about the infrasound and the inaudible infrasound that you can't hear, but still severely affects your health. And so much you have to leave your own home. That's what happens. It's happened to thousands of people who've had to move out of their homes, all right across the Western countries. Local populations ignored as businessmen and politicians in big cities far away destroy their environment, their house values and their health. To say nothing of the wildlife. I mean, it's obvious wind farms have massive contained CO2 emissions, and so will not reduce CO2 emissions anyway. The power they occasionally produce is often at the wrong time and in insufficient quantities anyway. This form of power generation is so inefficient that when wind does occasionally reach 20% of consumption, of electricity consumption, it means that baseload power has to be varied, so increasing the inefficiency and the emissions of the baseload power plant, which is most efficient, for example, when it's kept running constantly. It's so simple. I mean, a gas-fired power station will emit less CO2 than a wind farm over its lifetime. So this is a ridiculous thing to do. It's pure politics or economics or big business involved with, with the politicians in their pocket, and left-wing crackpot views. That's what it boils down to. And they've got to be stopped.